All right, man, peace. So, the light-skinned Colin Kaepernick, he crawled out of his woke rabbit hole to once again grace all the common folk with his presence. Of course, he stepped out in all black with the black leather jacket on to try to conjure up the image of Huey P. Newton. At least that's how they wanted to resonate in the subconscious mind of his followers, of his worshipers. Please keep in mind he was never dressing like that before, so he's clearly being dressed by somebody. Anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
Antonietta, thank you. Colin Kaepernick, clearly for the people. They're presented with the Sports Illustrated Muhammad Ali Legacy Award last night.
And if you notice, he clearly had a prepared statement. He kept talking about for the people. That's part of the image that they're trying to craft for him. Right? When they use those terms, power to the people, for the people, so on and so forth, they're not talking about anything populist or from from the perspective of someone who's concerned with the republic. When he uses that term, the people or for the people, he's talking about from a Marxist perspective. He's a Marxist. Okay.
Will Kane still here? Damian Woody back with us. Donovan, I want to start with you, though. Is it fair to compare Kaepernick to Ali?
Well, it doesn't matter whether it's fair or not. You guys are going to continue to do it because Colin Kaepernick is a pawn. He's being used. And as I've stated in previous videos, they're trying to transfer the energy of Muhammad Ali over to Colin Kaepernick to get so-called black people to follow him.
Well, I think the magnitude of what Ali was able to do, and at this particular point, what is done as far as years after, people will probably say no. But let's dig into this 5-10 years from now. We'll be looking back at Colin Kaepernick and really praising, first of all, his confidence. We'll be praising just the fact that he utilized his platform, not for him, but for others. And then the donations. That was something that I think a lot of people really glossed over, of just the donations that he has donated to different charities and different events over the last couple months. It's one to me as a former player, while we're hearing so much about all these players and the protests and them sitting down with legislation and representatives and things of that nature, and the guy who was the one who started this all was not invited to sit down and communicate with those particular individuals.
Allegedly, he wasn't invited. Allegedly. According to Malcolm Jenkins, he was. Now, we all know that if you go by what Colin Kaepernick's worshipers say, Malcolm Jenkins cannot be trusted. But I have a hard time believing that he would get on TV, look dead in the camera, and say that Colin Kaepernick was invited if he didn't come. Now, who knows? Maybe Malcolm Jenkins is just repeating what the NFL owners told him. But I really don't see why the NFL owners would have to lie about that. I pretty much would think that they would just tell Malcolm Jenkins he's not invited. They hold the power. They don't have to lie.
He is well rewarded for that award that he got for Sports Illustrated, and he will receive a lot more going forward.
Oh, he certainly will, because most of these magazines are really just mouthpieces for the international banks. Their job is to promote and push certain ideologies and certain hero figures for the masses at large to cling on to.
People may look at Colin Kaepernick, and however, you talk about it, the way he was dressed in all black with the
yes, dressed in all black. That's how he dresses now. As I stated on the magazine cover, he had the leather jacket on. Now at the award ceremony, he has on all black once again with the black blazer. What image is he trying to conjure up? Right, he's a so-called Black Panther now. Does anybody know if he actually affiliates with the group? I touched on this before. All black is for the worship of Saturn. Okay, Saturn is the ancient Roman version of the god known as Baal or Osiris, as he was known in Kemet.
The leather jacket or whatever it may be, the sport coat. He is all about the people, and you heard about his speech. I'm one that's in full support of what Colin Kaepernick believes in and what he has done.
I don't think that you know what Colin Kaepernick believes in, brother. I really don't think that you know. I know for a fact you don't know, because Colin Kaepernick don't even know what the fuck he believes in.
Being a former quarterback as well, I love the direction that he's going in, and he's not going to stop.
You love the direction that he's going in as a quarterback. The man is not even a quarterback anymore. So how could you love? Oh, okay, I know why you love it, because y'all both out the league.
And I think other players, young players, could look at this situation and understand that it's not all about you. It's about everyone else that's around you and behind you to have an opportunity to fulfill dreams and also be accepted and appreciated just like everyone else.
Well, if he's supposed to be an example of people understand that it's not all about them, I don't see how he would be a good example because he's not even in the NFL. So I doubt if he really can afford to feed people that are around him. Not that he really would need to, because he comes from a very rich white family. It's not like he comes from a poor, quote unquote, black family like many of these other black quarterbacks or black players do, who can't afford to make a show of things and to make a spectacle of themselves for appearances and for social media. They actually have to consider their family and the people who count on them from a monetary basis. They cannot just come out and make an example of themselves to try to garner some form of attention for a platform and for an ideology that they don't really understand themselves, which is clearly what Kaepernick is doing. And as I've stated in the past, on a deeper level, it's obvious to me that he's a pawn and that he's being manipulated. And I personally believe that he's a monarch athlete and that his woman is his handler, Ness Nitty. I have very, very little doubt about that. But I believe that most of these things will be revealed in due time.
I think that Colin Kaepernick being compared to Muhammad Ali is more apropos than most people realize, and not just for those that celebrate both figures. Hear me out on this, and Max in particular, I'm curious with, of course, your deep boxing knowledge of it.
Max don't got no deep boxing knowledge. Max is a fucking fanboy who read a couple books and think he knows something. Max don't know a fucking thing.
In history, I grew up in a house where Muhammad Ali was celebrated. He was idolized. I think by the time later in life, Muhammad Ali was almost universally accepted.
Look, I don't know who you trying to get to believe that bullshit, but I damn sure don't. But I will say this, and a lot of brothers don't understand this. Muhammad Ali was only revolutionary for a very short portion of his life. As I stated in the video that I did about him, he started listening to the Nation of Islam rhetoric in about 1957 at the age of 15. But he did not come out as a member of the Nation of Islam until 1964. By 1976, he was already moving towards Orthodox Islam, at which point he started to become more of a pawn for globalism than anything else. That's when you started to see more of him going to these different countries and kissing babies and being used as a diplomat and an ambassador by the U.S. government, things of that nature. I mean, please understand, like, more than one of Muhammad Ali's daughters is married to a white man. Okay, so, once again, this is why I call this a pro-truth channel. This is not a pro-black channel. Pro-black people like to nitpick and take little things here and take little things there and try to create their own fake ideology to make themselves feel better. You have to look at things in their entirety to understand how to evaluate things and how to view things. Because if you don't look at things from a truthful perspective, the truth is going to come back and bite you. It's either, it can either bite you in the face or it can bite you in the ass. It's up to you. I'd rather have things bite me in the face so I can see it coming. When you don't accept the truth will make you accept it. So Muhammad Ali was a pawn for the globalist agenda really over the last 40 years of his life, from 1976 to 2016. I mean, he really, the image of him as a strong advocate for black issues and black rights really was only for about a 12-year, 13-year period. Am I saying that Ali was not a great man? I'm not saying that at all. As I've stated in the previous video that I did on him, he had a lot of great attributes that, people can admire. He had great courage, etc. But, there's a difference between the truth and the narrative.
Because, number one, he was just so transcendently excellent at his sport. He was just cloaked in charm and charisma, and no one could deny the sincerity and the conviction of his positions.
I'm not sure if you know what the sincerity and the conviction of his positions are, Will Kane. Muhammad Ali said many things that if he were to say them today, he would be vilified and demonized. Believe me, especially during that time period where he was in the Nation of Islam. That brother said things about Caucasians and women and race relations that if you said those things today, he would be totally lambasted. And most of the things that he said about those topics were true.
So much so that he sacrificed parts of the prime of his career to pursue them. Many of those same things can be said about Colin Kaepernick. As Antoinetta said leading into this, we can see his charitable contributions. I believe, as a critic of Colin Kaepernick, in the sincerity of his convictions. His sacrifice is undoubtable. It's unrebuttable. But my criticism from day number one with Colin Kaepernick has been, is he accurately and productively contributing to the conversation of the issues in this country? Because if you're not, what I think is you're contributing to tearing us apart. Now, here's the part I'd really like you to hear, Max.
Well, before you go into your jargon, and I've stated this already, you can't divide something that was never unified. Okay? You can't tear apart something that was never sewn together. The only thing that anyone who speaks accurately on race can do is shine light on what everybody already sees. So, in regards to Colin Kaepernick, no, if you want to say that, was he speaking in a quote-unquote productive way in regards to race relations, meaning in a way that will assuage your guilt and make so-called black people quote-unquote forget the problems that our people have? Was he speaking in that way? No. But was he speaking in a way to alleviate any problems? Did he have a plan? Absolutely not. Colin Kaepernick's goal was to cripple the NFL. And so far, he has not been successful. And Malcolm Jenkins was integral in being able to controvert the attempts by Colin Kaepernick to destroy the NFL. Once again, I believe that he was a plant. But, certain things will be revealed down the line.
Here, Max, Muhammad Ali has been sanctified. He's been whitewashed. He's been turned only into a simplified caricature of what he actually was in life. And many of the things that Muhammad Ali said, especially early in his career, were vile.
Hey, didn't I tell you? Right? Didn't I tell you? So now, see, a person like Will Cain, he doesn't really know what he thinks about Muhammad Ali, because the same things that he's saying that he attributes Ali to being brave about, speaking the truth about, he's now saying were vile. So this is how you know that Will Cain was he just drafted an argument in a way to not attack Ali, but also to address what he knows. Anyone who is knowledgeable about many of the things that Ali said, especially in today's day and age, according to today's judgments or appraisals of what a proper outlook on society is, would say that Ali's statements were off-putting, to say the least. According to modern day conventions of what propriety is. Anybody who knows what Ali said back then knows he was just speaking the truth. But it is what it is. I mean, outside of the worship of a man, like how he worshiped Elijah Muhammad, outside of that, most of what the Nation of Islam stated was relatively true. Relatively true.
In fact, they were bigoted. Now, I'm not saying Colin Kaepernick has ever done anything like this, but, Muhammad Ali talked about white people being evil, white people being the devil, that we should not mix between each other. Bluebirds and bluebirds and redbirds. You can see this stuff on YouTube and interviews with BBC.
Well, that's good. Then you know what? I stand corrected. That's good. Will Cain went and he did his research. That's very good. And Ali did say that. He said bluebirds should stick with bluebirds, redbirds should stick with redbirds. And those are the same things that most of the people from your neck of the woods believe, Will Cain. You just won't come on TV and say it.
Or William F. Buckley. He celebrated George Wallace, the segregationist governor of Alabama.
Because Muhammad Ali understood that in order for so-called black people to come into an understanding of who they really are, they have to be separate. I've stated numerous times on this channel that Ali embraced a separatist ideology. That's why I respect him, because he wasn't somebody just out there talking. He actually joined an organization that embodied many of the tenets that he adhered to, that he believed in.
Muhammad Ali actually spoke at a Klan rally because he believed in separatism at one time. He evolved in life, and he became, in my estimation, more informed on views. He became more enlightened. He became an activist for peace.
Well, no, actually, he just became watered down. And I think that Ali was just looking for a way to he was trying to figure out how to survive after Elijah Muhammad passed. After his career came to an end, he understood that he was going to have to find a way to generate money. So I think that he understood that he was going to have to take a much softer approach on racial issues so that he could be the benefactor of many of the liberal Caucasians who admired him. He could not take such a strident view on race anymore, just as a survival tactic. But from what I understand, he still understood most of the tenets of separatism and racial identity were still relevant, even to the end of his life.
But at one point, he was contributing to pulling us apart. And this is why I think the comparison can be...
This fool said Muhammad Ali was contributing to pulling people apart at a time period where so-called black people could not even be the recipients of humane treatment.
It's apropos. I believe when Colin Kaepernick is sloppy with socks or shirts or messages and he's inaccurate, in those moments, he's not bringing us together, he's contributing to tearing us apart. And I see these two figures as two that can be compared, and hopefully
you're largely right.
Hopefully Kaepernick can evolve like Ali did.
You're largely right in your analysis. I disagree with your conclusion. Not that your conclusion about Ali is incorrect as a young man and the parallels with Kaepernick, and maybe the way in which Kaepernick will mature. Because Muhammad Ali was an uneducated kid from Louisville.
Hey, you guys see that? What do I always tell you about the white liberal? The white liberal, like Max Kellerman, they embrace the white man's burden philosophy. They just do not say that expressly. The white man's burden philosophy is that I know what's best for you, Negro. I can think for you because you're not capable of thinking for yourself. So in other words, the reason why Muhammad Ali joined the Nation of Islam is because he was uneducated. Right? He wasn't right upstairs. Because according to Will Cain and Max Kellerman, this is why they agree, Muhammad Ali was contributing to pulling apart white and black people. It wasn't the policies of America that were, quote unquote, pulling people apart. It was Muhammad Ali and the members of the Nation of Islam who said to themselves, black people are not treated humanely, so let's separate, which is something that any rational person would do. I wonder how Max Kellerman would respond or react if a Nazi stated that Jewish people who didn't like Nazis were pulling each other apart. How come at the Nuremberg trials, Nazis were put to death? They weren't told, let's all build bridges and come together. They were all hunted down and penalized and punished, and most of them put to death. I wonder why that is. You see how they have different standards for themselves as opposed to the standards that they have for so-called black people? They don't believe that you have the right or the ability to think for yourself, and that you should not have the right to seek out retribution. You should always want to mend fences with them.
Graduated high school, kinda, sorta, but really was not at a high school level when he became aware of bigger issues and started thinking about them. Was largely influenced by Elijah Muhammad, at first Malcolm X, then Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam, and which was at the time, as you said, a bigoted organization. And later, as Malcolm X did, had an awakening as he matured.
I wonder if Max Kellerman would say that the Jewish Defense League is a bigoted organization. I wonder.
And saw the world and felt very differently than he had as a young man. But you can't take it out of its context. Muhammad Ali.
Well, look, I don't believe that Ali really felt differently. I just believe that Ali started to see things at a grander scale, and he started to realize that the movement of the Nation of Islam was not going to materialize, and I think that he fell into conventional Islam, which is a globalist religion. It's another video for another day, but Islam is really just Catholicism for the Middle East. That really is all it is. It's an Arabic version of the Kemetic Babylonian mystery school system. The Kaaba stone, or the cube, is really the cube of Saturn. Before it was venerated by Islam, it was venerated as a Hindu symbol. They have the Shiva Lingam there. The so-called black stone is encased in an object that is purposefully meant to resemble a female vulva for the mother goddess, so on and so forth. But look, that's neither here nor there. We'll cover Islam probably in another video. But Ali fell into the globalist mentality. But he still understood the racial dynamics. He just became an older and wiser man to a degree, at least wiser in regards to how he perceived race relations. He understood that the super militant mentality really does not mean anything if you're not going to wage war. And he also got sucked into conventional Islam. So all of those factors contributed to Ali taking a different view or a different stance on race relations. But once again, from what I understand, he still was a heavy contributor to the Nation of Islam, even until the day of his death. So that to me proves and verifies that he really just became a member of conventional Islam as a survival tactic. And also because he was most likely tired of getting extorted by the Nation of Islam.
Ali was around in a time where a lot of the issues about which Colin Kaepernick is protesting were legally sanctioned. Discrimination, racial discrimination, was disgustingly legally sanctioned and supported by a majority of the South. That's what was happening. And it was a disgusting period in our history. And Muhammad Ali was dealing with this since he was a child. And when he became older and powerful, he was, as many black people were, very angry about it. Many people, just, socially conscious people, were very angry about it. And so what you describe as bigoted reaction is understandable given the circumstances of the time. It's more understandable than it would be at another time in history, at a more recent time in history. And some of...
No, sir. There is no time where the so-called black reaction or response to their condition in America is more or less understandable, because it's not really up to you to understand it. It's not really relevant what you understand. It's really only relevant what the so-called black man understands. And that, once again, is another theme on my channel. When the so-called black man understands that it doesn't matter what the so-called white man thinks, then, our people will be on their way to some form of spiritual liberty. The spiritual and mental liberty have to come before any other form of liberty. But once again, I just want brothers to please concentrate on the mentality of both of these men. Now, the last time that these men were able to meet in the middle was in regards to Kyrie Irving, if you remember. Now they're meeting in the middle in regards to Muhammad Ali and their view that he also was a person who took a far too militant route in regards to race relations. The difference is that Max Kellerman believes that he can explain it, while Will Kane, in his version of the events, is that Ali was able to grow past. He was able to grow past a very infantile method of dealing with quote unquote racism, as if Will Kane is equipped to tell a so-called black man how he should deal with racism. We all know that if the Caucasian is going to tell a black man how to deal with racism, it's always going to be in the least threatening way possible for the Caucasian.
Some of Colin Kaepernick's immaturity and the way that's come out, I'll get the pigs on the socks, the shirt depicting not only Malcolm X but also Castro, could also be seen as someone who's angry about circumstances as they're becoming more educated about them.
Well, he was triggered by all the internet, the social media shit. Like I stated, the Philando Castile and the Alton Sterling shooting. Those are the main things that triggered him, and also the fact that he saw his role as a star quarterback in the NFL slipping away, and then of course also meeting and getting to know Miss Ness Nitty.
And is acting out in a way that maybe they wouldn't as they get older. So I agree that there are some parallels there. But here's the bigger point. I understand, I'm glad that you grew up in a house that idolized Muhammad Ali, as I did. Every step of the way, the house that I grew up in and the people I came from really loved Muhammad Ali, in spite sometimes of his missteps as a young man. And it is interesting to me.
I wonder if Stephen A. was there, or even Donovan McNabb. Sometimes I wonder, is it just that they don't say it, or do they not even think to say to a person like Max Kellerman, do you really comprehend that part of racism is the belief by the Caucasian that their feelings about how black people should think about racism matters? Now, I mean, as we go through this modern neoliberal fascist reconditioning of how to view and deal with women, how they try to overly exploit many of the situations that women have been in or subjected to in America, in the workplace, etc. how they're trying to use it to recondition men. What are men constantly told? It doesn't matter how you feel about it. All that matters is how the victim feels about it. Isn't that what men are told? So isn't it extremely patronizing that Caucasians, particularly people like Max Kellerman or Will Kane, seem to think that it's okay for them to tell so-called black people how they should feel about racism and how they should handle the situation? Very interesting. And I always wonder if those thoughts ever cross Stephen A. Smith's mind or Donovan McNabb.
That many of the same people or same kinds of people today who oppose Colin Kaepernick and his protest were the same people and the same kinds of people who at the time, before the winds blew against the Vietnam War, before Ali proved himself in the crucible of athletic competition as great and here to stay, before the countercultural revolution really had the effect that it would later have, the same people who were for Ali and the same kinds of people are for Kaepernick and against Ali, against Kaepernick.
No, I don't think so. I think that that's a presumption to make you feel like you're on the right side. And this is something that's often done by Caucasian liberals. They try to take the moral high ground. I've covered this in the past.
That, to me, means that they got this award right, Sports Illustrated did, when they gave it to Kaepernick, and I understand it. And I'm not saying Kaepernick's the football player that Ali was the boxer, nor is he facing jail time, which Ali was willing to face. He could have gotten up to 5 years in prison for refusing to be inducted into the armed services during the Vietnam War. So he didn't make the sacrifice Ali made either. But that's...
Yes, because once again, and as I've tried to tell people, Ali was not protesting the Vietnam War. He did not want to be a part of the draft process because he fought as a conscientious objector as a Muslim minister, all right, which is lawful. That's why he was subject to incarceration. Kaepernick has never been subject to any incarceration because what he's doing is frivolity, all right? What Ali was doing was based in legality. Those are two totally separate issues. Muhammad Ali was not anywhere holding up signs and burning draft cards.
It's an issue of degree, not of kind. And I think if Ali were around, he'd be proud to hand Kaepernick that award.
Well, I'm sure that he probably would be, but it would be because he might be so drugged up that he would not even be fully aware of what he was doing. And I say that to not be disrespectful to the brother at all. But that would most likely be the reason. And also because he was being paid to make the presentation.
Yeah, I think all of you guys have touched on a lot of really good things, and I just want to reiterate a couple things. One, I always say love is sacrifice, sacrificing of oneself, whether it be principle, ideology, or person or people. And that's the one thing that you can say about both men. We saw it with Ali. Max, you touched upon it. Muhammad Ali, at the height of his career, sacrificed his career, was stripped of his title for protesting the Vietnam War. Colin Kaepernick, unpopular move, protesting the national anthem, was basically relegated out of a job, not being able to get back into the National Football League. If you look at all the circumstances surrounding Colin Kaepernick, he should absolutely be playing quarterback in the National Football League. The contributions that Colin Kaepernick has done to this point, I mean, you can see where we've come as far as the protest to the point of the NFL being able to give almost $100 million. This all started with Colin Kaepernick with one simple gesture. Think about how this whole process has evolved, the national conversation that has come about, all because of one man and what he's sacrificed as far as his personal gain in order to advance a people and a cause.
That motherfucker hasn't sacrificed anything. He opted out of his contract. His dumbass wanted to leave San Francisco. Nobody else picked him up because nobody else wanted to deal with his bullshit. He was the quarterback of a 2-14 team last year. He barely was able to keep his job over Blaine Gabbert. People act like he's Tom Brady or some shit, like he was throwing 45 touchdowns with 5 interceptions every year, and now he's standing on a dais with a big, fake-looking afro, accepting an award from another monarch child like Beyonce. Like, I mean, I'm sorry, but the man there's nothing impressive about what he's done or what he's doing. To me, it all looks contrived. I'm sure that many brothers are going to be offended, particularly the pro-black dudes who keep coming on my channel, even though I tell them it's not a pro-black channel. I don't know how many times I have to say that this is not a pro-black channel. This is a pro-truth channel. All right? The so-called black man needs to hear the truth. He needs to stop hearing all this pro-black bullshit. Because if you notice, the pro-black bullshit is not getting our people anywhere. It's not getting the so-called black man anywhere. My message will always be focused towards the so-called black man because he is the head and he has to have the mentality of the head. He cannot have the mentality of somebody who is going to walk into a room with a bunch of black women and look at himself as being equal to them. They're not equal to you, and they know it. Okay? They're playing a practical joke on you, trying to make you think that they're equal to you. It does not mean that you should look down upon other demographics or other groups as being less than per se. But you should certainly not look at yourself as being less than. And no, a woman is not equal to you. The woman is beautiful. She's essential. I've said this over and over and over again. But she's not equal to the man, and the man is not equal to her. She does things that the man cannot do. She does things that can't be replaced. But the man is the head. The man is the one who thinks logically with rationale, and he is the builder. He is the constructor. Period. So, all that being said, no, there's nothing about Kaepernick that has impressed me in the least. I think that he's somebody being led about. I think that he's somebody being puppeted. And it's only a matter of time before it all comes out. Most of it has already come out already. Supposedly he's so pro-black. His family's Caucasian. His woman is an Arab. I don't see the pro-blackness. I'm sorry. I just don't. But anyway, I'm going to end it here because they're pretty much just regurgitating what each other is saying. But Kaepernick has crawled out of his woke rabbit hole, and I predict that he's going to crawl out even more and more as his book is about to hit the stands. As I told you, brothers, he would. All right, this is all show business. But anyway, peace.